tower shook. Alarms screamed through 38 floors. Smoke billowed from the technical room on the top level. CEO Seraphina Lockhart's voice cracked as she clutched her assistant close. "I'm begging you, save us." William Carter, the quiet janitor, set down his mop and knelt beside the ticking device. Red lights blinked in chaotic rhythm. Wires tangled like veins. He drew a slow breath, hands steady as stone. Everyone held their breath as the blade touched plastic. No one knew this single father had once been an EOD specialist, a man trained to speak the language of bombs. It was a Monday morning at Lockhart Tower, headquarters of Lockhart Industries, a gleaming monument of glass and steel that pierced the city skyline like a shard of ambition. The building hummed with the energy of a major product launch, a new digital security platform designed to revolutionize corporate safety. Cold blue lights washed over polished marble floors. Executives in tailored suits moved with purpose through lobbies where modern art hung like promises of innovation. Among them, one figure stood out. Seraphina Lockhart commanded attention without demanding it. At 34, she had built her late father's company into an empire. Her intelligence matched only by her beauty. Blonde hair fell in waves past her shoulders, catching light with each measured step. Today she wore a crimson dress with a deep V-neck, bold, elegant, a declaration of confidence. She moved through her domain with the certainty of someone who had never doubted her right to lead. But Seraphina carried a blind spot she didn't recognize. She saw titles before people, positions before potential. The higher someone sat on the organizational chart, the more they existed in her world. William Carter existed in the spaces Seraphina never noticed. At 36, he was tall and broad-shouldered, his presence somehow both substantial and invisible. He worked the morning shift as a janitor, pushing his cart through corridors before most employees arrived. His movements were economical, deliberate. Those who bothered to look, and few did, might notice something in his eyes, a depth that suggested he'd seen more than floor wax and coffee stains. What they wouldn't know was that William was a single father, that he woke at 4:30 each morning to prepare breakfast for his 7-year-old daughter Audrey before his shift, that he'd chosen this quiet work deliberately, trading a past he'd buried for a present where he could be there when Audrey got home from school. The collision happened near the executive elevators at 7:45. Seraphina, absorbed in her tablet, strode toward the event hall. William rounded the corner with his cleaning cart. The impact was minor, her coffee sloshed but didn't spill. But a few drops hit her designer heels. She looked down first at the shoes, then up at him with cool irritation. "You just need to watch where you're going and keep the floors clean. That's all." William met her gaze with calm that bordered on indifference. "Yes, ma'am." He pulled a cloth from his belt and knelt to wipe the drops. A small hand tugged at his sleeve. Audrey had been waiting by the lobby cafe, her usual spot during school breaks when William brought her to work. She was a bright-eyed child with dark hair pulled into a ponytail, a backpack covered in heart-shaped stickers riding her shoulders. Seraphina glanced at the girl with surprise. She hadn't realized the janitor had a child with him. Something softened in her expression for a moment, then hardened again as she walked away, heels clicking against marble. Audrey watched her go with curious eyes. "She's pretty." "That she is," William agreed quietly. "But not nice?" William considered this as he returned his cloth to the cart. Sometimes people forget to be kind when they're focused on being important. Later, as they shared a quick breakfast in the maintenance break room, Audrey asked about his work. William told her something he'd told her before. A story that was both truth and careful omission. "There are lots of jobs in the world, sweetheart. Some people build things. Some people protect things. And some people protect other people. Like police? Different. Quieter." He tapped her sticker-covered backpack. "Like making sure nothing bad happens before it starts." Audrey absorbed this with the seriousness of someone who understood more than her years suggested. She peeled a heart sticker from her collection and pressed it onto her father's lunch container. "For being brave." On the 33rd floor, In the glass-walled situation room of the R&D department, a different conversation was unfolding. Astrid Hale, a sharp-minded systems engineer, stared at her monitor with growing concern. Lines of access logs scrolled past her eyes, but something was wrong with the timestamps. "Oliver," she called to the CTO, who was reviewing presentation slides nearby. "Someone's been probing the elevator control system." Oliver Grant looked up, his usual confidence flickering. "Probing how?" "Testing vulnerabilities. Access attempts at odd hours. And look at this." She highlighted a sequence. "These logs have been backdated. Someone with internal access is trying to hide their tracks." Before Oliver could respond, the building's intercom crackled to life. The launch event was in full swing in the grand hall on the 20th floor. 200 employees and invited press filled the space, champagne flutes in hand. Eyes on the massive LED wall where Lockhart Industries' new security platform was being unveiled. Seraphina stood at the podium, her voice clear and commanding. Then the screen went black. A distorted voice replaced her presentation, mechanical and deliberate. "Lockhart Industries. You build walls and call them safety. You profit from security you once helped destroy. There is a device on the 38th floor. It will speak the truth you've buried. You have 2 hours." The feed cut. For 3 seconds, silence held the room like a held breath. Then chaos erupted. Elevator lights went dark. Electronic card readers flashed red. Denied, denied, denied. The building's automated systems locked down in emergency protocol. Smoke began seeping from a service panel near the executive suites on 38. People screamed. Some ran for stairs, only to find them jammed with bodies. Others pulled out phones, calling police, calling loved ones, calling anyone. Seraphina's training kicked in. "Everyone calm down. Move to the stairwells in orderly groups. We have protocols for this." But her voice couldn't reach over the panic. She looked around for her security team, for someone to take command of the dissolving order. In the chaos, Astrid was already moving. She grabbed Finn Enoch, the building's maintenance technician, a practical man who knew every pipe and wire in the tower. The 38th floor. Something was delivered there this morning. Finn's face went pale. Equipment boxes came in Friday, marked as HVAC parts. I signed for them, but they weren't on my work order. Who authorized delivery? The manifest said it was cleared by facilities. But I never verified. Because he stopped. Because it had seemed routine. Because he'd trusted the paperwork. On the 38th floor, in a maintenance corridor thick with smoke, William Carter moved with purpose. He'd gotten Audrey to a ventilated hallway near the northwest stairs, made her promise to stay put. "Right here, sweetheart. Don't move until I come back." "Where are you going?" "To make sure everyone's safe." He'd squeezed her hand once, then disappeared into the haze. He'd seen the equipment box immediately wrong size for HVAC, wrong weight distribution, sitting in a corridor that didn't serve any mechanical systems. He'd spent enough years in Iraq and Afghanistan to recognize the outline of trouble. William approached carefully, listening. Through the smoke, he could hear it a rhythmic, ticking, electronic, insistent. His stomach tightened with old instinct. He pulled his shirt over his nose and examined the exterior. Military-grade case. Commercial locks but installed backward. Pressure sensors on the corners. This wasn't a hoax. He closed his eyes and counted his breaths. 4 in, 4 out. Just like before. Just like always. When Seraphina reached the 38th floor, having overridden Vivian Hale's furious demands that she evacuate, she found her janitor kneeling beside a metal case, studying it with an intensity that transformed him. Around him, he'd gathered items from his cart: duct tape, wire cutters, a flashlight, a utility knife, and improvised air filters made from cleaning rags and elastic bands. "What are you doing?" Her voice was sharp with fear disguised as authority. William didn't look up. What needs to be done? The police are coming. FBI. Bomb squad. You need to get away from that. In 90 minutes, maybe. We have less than that. He pointed to a display barely visible through a gap in the casing. Digital timer. Accelerating countdown. This building will be rubble before help arrives. Seraphina's throat tightened. How do you know? Because I've seen devices like this before. He finally met her eyes. I have experience with trigger mechanisms. Tripwires. Motion sensors. The kind of work where one wrong move ends everything. The words hung between them. Seraphina's mind raced through impossible calculations. This man, this janitor, she'd barely noticed, was claiming expertise in explosives. It was absurd. It was insane. But the calm in his voice, the certainty in his hands, told her something her prejudice had refused to see. What experience? She whispered. The kind that kept people alive in places where death was patient. Astrid arrived then, Finn behind her, both carrying equipment. She took one look at the device and pulled out a portable oscilloscope. Motion sensors active. Any vibration over 0.25 Gs will trigger it. William nodded. We need to kill the auxiliary power to this floor. Cut the ambient vibration from the HVAC. Finn was already moving. I can access the subpanel from the service shaft. Give me 3 minutes. Oliver Grant appeared, his face slick with sweat. The FBI says to evacuate everyone below the 20th floor and wait for their team. We won't last that long, William said simply. He began organizing the items around him with the precision of ritual. I need everyone to help. Oliver, you block the access corridor. No one comes near. Any footsteps, any vibration could set this off. Bridget. He glanced at the PR director who'd followed the group up. Manage the evacuation. Keep people calm. Quiet. Bridget Connolly, usually polished and controlled, looked at him with wide eyes. Who are you? Someone who knows what happens when these things go wrong. Audrey appeared at the corridor entrance, heart stickers visible on her small backpack. She held out her father's lunch container. You forgot this, Daddy. William's composure cracked for just a second. Then he smiled, soft and sad. Keep it safe for me, sweetheart. The sticker will help me be brave. Seraphina watched this moment, a father's love compressed into seconds before potential death, and something shifted in her chest. She knelt beside William. Tell me what to do. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. When I say, you're going to pull the main breaker for this floor, you'll need steady hands. No hesitation. I can do that. I know you can. William examined the case more closely. The screws were installed in reverse thread, designed to strip if someone tried conventional removal. Traces of metallic powder around the seams suggested anti-tamper sensors. This was professional work, built by someone who understood both engineering and psychology. This is a 2-stage device, he said, more to himself than others. Primary circuit with a backup trigger. If I disable one, the other activates. They're designed to ensure detonation, even if partially compromised. Astrid leaned in with her oscilloscope. The countdown is tied to a vibration threshold. The building's natural sway is keeping us just under the trigger point. But any increase, a shift in wind load, seismic activity, even too many people moving at once. We're out of time, Finn called from the access panel. Auxiliary power is isolated. HVAC is down. But that only buys us minutes before the battery backup kicks in. William's mind raced through scenarios he'd lived a lifetime ago. IEDs on market roads in Baghdad. Vehicle bombs in Kandahar. Each one a puzzle of death that demanded perfect understanding. He'd been good at this work. Too good. Until the day imperfect intelligence had cost him everything. The memory surfaced unbidden, sharp as yesterday. Military transport. A village outside Mosul. Intel said the building was clear. But William's hands had found a device anyway, hidden in a false wall. The device had been connected to a secondary charge no one knew about. He'd followed protocol, cleared the immediate area, called in his team, but the intelligence was wrong. The timing was wrong. His wife, a civilian contractor, an engineer helping rebuild infrastructure, had been in the structure they thought was safe. The explosion had been enormous. The silence afterward had been complete. William had left the military 3 months later. Not dishonorably, but definitively. He'd taken Audrey, barely 2 years old then, and disappeared into civilian life. Chose a job where he could be anonymous, where his hands cleaned instead of cut, where he could be home when his daughter needed him. He'd sworn he was done speaking the language of bombs, but bombs, it seemed, still spoke his language. He surfaced from the memory, sweat on his brow despite the cool air. His hands were steady, but his heart hammered against his ribs. Audrey was here, in this building. If he failed, don't let fear make your decisions. The words were his old commander's, echoing across years. He breathed them like a mantra. William identified the primary circuit, traced its path through the device's guts. The wiring was sophisticated. 2 detonation paths that mirrored each other. The builder had reversed the standard color coding. Red was ground, black was hot. A trap for anyone who thought they knew explosive ordnance. "I need absolute stillness," William said. No movement above a whisper's vibration. Astrid nodded, adjusted her equipment. "Motion sensors are at 80% threshold. Any spike and—" "I know." William pulled out the wire cutters. "Finn, I need you to freeze the vibration for 10 seconds. Use the foam padding from the maintenance closet. Press it against the ceiling mounts." Finn moved immediately, understanding the physics, dampening the ambient vibration, creating a pocket of stillness. "Seraphina," William's voice was quiet but absolute. "On my mark. You kill the main power to floor 38. The breaker box is in the utility room. Throw switches 4, 7, and 9 simultaneously." She stared at him. "Simultaneously?" "Yes. If you stagger them, the voltage drop will trigger the secondary circuit. It has to be one motion. Can you do it?" Seraphina Lockhart, who'd made million-dollar decisions without flinching, felt her hands tremble. Then she remembered the coffee spill that morning. The dismissive words. This man had absorbed her contempt without complaint. Now he was asking her to trust him with hundreds of lives. She steadied herself. "I can do it." William positioned the cutters around the first wire, the one leading to the primary detonator. This was the moment. The breath between heartbeats. The space where life and death traded places. "On 3, he said. 1, 2. He cut. The device's ticking slowed, shifted pitch. Red lights dimmed to amber. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then the backup circuit screamed to life. A second countdown activated. Faster. Angrier. The display showed 60 seconds. And dropping. Astrid's voice was tight. Failsafe triggered. "It's accelerating." William didn't panic. Panic was death. He traced the backup circuit with his eyes, following it to a micro relay behind the primary board. Standard design would put it left-mounted, but this builder had reversed everything. His fingers found it on the right side, hidden behind a false panel. 30 seconds. "The relay has a ceramic fuse," William said. "If I can fracture it without completing the circuit." 20 seconds. Seraphina gripped the doorframe of the utility room. She could see the breaker box, see the switches William had named. Her whole body was taut as wire. 15 seconds. William pulled a thin screwdriver from his toolkit, inserted it into the relay housing, applied pressure at an angle not straight force, which would complete the circuit, but a leveraging torque designed to crack the ceramic without connecting the leads. 10 seconds. The fuse resisted. William increased pressure, felt the material begin to give. Too much, and it would shatter completely. Too little, and nothing would happen. 5 seconds. The ceramic cracked. The relay opened. The circuit died. The countdown stopped at 3 seconds. The building was silent. Then everyone breathed at once. A collective exhale of survival. Seraphina's legs nearly gave out. She gripped the wall, tears she didn't know she'd been holding spilling down her cheeks. Audrey ran to William, and he caught her up, held her tight against his chest, his own eyes wet. "You did it, Daddy. We did it, sweetheart." All of us. FBI Special Agent Henry Blake arrived on the 38th floor 10 minutes later, his tactical team spreading through the corridor. He was a man of rigid protocol, 50 years old with gray at his temples and a gaze that missed nothing. He took one look at the disarmed device, at William Carter kneeling beside it, and his expression shifted. William Carter. It wasn't a question. EOD. 10th Mountain Division. "I remember your file." William stood slowly. "That was a long time ago. Not long enough to forget those hands." Blake gestured to the device. "Clean work. Professional. You sure you've been pushing mops?" "I've been being a father." William's voice was quiet. "That's all I wanted to be." Blake nodded slowly, then turned to his team. "Document everything. And someone get this man a statement form. He's our primary witness." Astrid was already at her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. "I've traced the access logs. The account used to upload the threat and manipulate the elevator systems it's registered to a former employee, Dante Cross." The name landed like a stone in water. Seraphina's face went pale. "Dante. He was our lead engineer 5 years ago. We had to let him go when we restructured. Shut down the military contracts division." Vivian Hale, the chief legal counsel, arrived with a tablet full of old files. Dante Cross filed a grievance, said his family had been harmed by faulty equipment our company sold to defense contractors in the early 2000s. "Before your father died, before you took over," he blamed Lockhart Industries for his brother's death in a training accident overseas. The pieces assembled themselves. A man with a grudge, with technical expertise, with knowledge of the building's systems, and with a loss deep enough to carve him into someone who'd risk mass casualties for revenge disguised as justice. Blake was already coordinating. "Get me everything on Cross. Last known address, associates, digital footprint. He's close he had to be to monitor the device remotely." William spoke, his voice cutting through the tactical chatter. "He's not done." Everyone turned to him. Blake frowned. "The device is disarmed. This one is. But someone this careful doesn't rely on a single point of failure." William pointed to the device's internal construction. This was meant to be found, meant to be difficult, but not impossible. A distraction. Astrid's fingers stopped mid-type. "A secondary device." "Where?" Seraphina's voice was raw. William closed his eyes, thinking like the builder. "Somewhere that creates maximum panic if the primary fails. Somewhere people would run to." His eyes opened. The auxiliary power room. 12th floor, where the backup generators are. Finn was already pulling up building schematics. If the generators go, the building loses emergency systems. Fire suppression, backup lighting, anyone still inside. They were running before he finished the sentence. The 12th floor was a maze of mechanical systems, pipes, and electrical conduits. Smoke from earlier still clung to corners. The auxiliary power room was behind a service door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Its lock blinking green, someone had overridden it remotely. Inside, amid the thrumming generators, sat a smaller device, cruder than the first, but no less deadly. And standing beside it, laptop open, was Dante Cross. He was 40 but looked older, worn by grief that had aged him in dog years. His eyes held the particular madness of someone who'd convinced himself that destruction was justice. "You weren't supposed to disarm it," Dante said, his voice hollow. No one was supposed to be that good. William stepped forward slowly, hands visible. I was. Once. Then you know why I'm doing this. Dante's hand hovered over the keyboard. Lockhart Industries sold faulty explosive ordnance in 2006. My brother was a combat engineer. The trigger mechanism failed during a training exercise. He died because this company chose profit over safety. Seraphina moved beside William, her voice shaking but clear. I was 19 when that happened. I didn't run the company. I didn't make those decisions. But you inherited the empire built on those decisions. Dante's fingers trembled above the keys. You profit from blood money. You're right, Seraphina said, and the admission seemed to shock everyone, including Dante. My father made choices I'm only now understanding. Choices that hurt people. Killed people. I can't undo that. But killing more people won't balance the scales. It just adds weight. William spoke then, his voice carrying the authority of experience. I lost someone too. To bad intelligence and worse luck. And I learned something in the years since. He took another step closer. Bombs make noise. They demand attention. They force people to listen through fear. But the truth doesn't need to explode. The truth is patient. It waits to be spoken clearly, in daylight. Where everyone can see it. Dante's hand wavered. No one will listen. I will, Seraphina said. I'll open every file. Every contract from the old military division. I'll establish a compensation fund for victims and families. I'll make public every failure, every shortcut, every choice that prioritized profit over safety. I'll own what my company did. That's not enough. It's a start. William was close enough now to see the tears on Dante's face. And it's more than you'll achieve with this. If you trigger that device, you become what you hate. You become the person who values death over truth. Henry Blake and his team had positioned themselves at the door, weapons trained, but Blake held up a fist. Wait. He'd seen enough desperate people to know when to let words work. Dante's hand dropped from the keyboard to his lap. His shoulders shook with sobs. He was 23. My little brother. He just wanted to serve. I know, William said gently. And he deserved better. They all did. Dante closed the laptop. The device stayed silent. Blake's team moved in then, securing him with professional efficiency that somehow still managed gentleness. As they led Dante away, he looked at Seraphina. Keep your promise. I will, she said. I swear it. The crisis ended not with explosions, but with handcuffs and exhaustion. William watched them take Dante Cross to a federal vehicle, then turned to find Audrey being entertained by Bridget Connolly, who'd somehow produced coloring books from her emergency kit. Blake approached, offering a hand. The city owes you a debt. William shook it, just doing what needed doing. Still. Blake produced a card. If you ever want to consult, train people in crisis response. There's a need for people who stay calm when the world burns. Think about it. William pocketed the card without commitment, then looked to where Seraphina stood with Vivian, already on the phone with lawyers, beginning the process of fulfillment and accountability. 1 week later, Lockhart Industries held a private gathering in the executive dining room. Not a celebration, the word felt wrong, but an acknowledgement. Seraphina stood before her core team. Her dress today a subdued navy, professional and softer than her usual armor. I won't call anyone a hero, she began. That word gets used to avoid dealing with complexity. What happened last week was a failure of corporate responsibility that put hundreds of lives at risk. It was also a moment when people chose to act with courage and competence. Her eyes found William in the back. One person in particular reminded me that value isn't measured by title or position. It's measured by what you do when everything's on the line. She announced the compensation fund publicly, including a full audit of historical contracts. The media coverage was brutal at first. But Vivian had anticipated that. Better to bleed truth now than hemorrhage secrets later. Oliver updated their crisis protocols, instituting new rules. Human judgment before system automation. Every time. Bridget managed the public narrative, releasing a carefully edited clip of William's hands working on the device, technical details blurred, but the steadiness of his competence clear. The headline became, "Not Janitor Saves Company, but Quiet Courage in Crisis." Seraphina made William an offer. Not a promotion, he'd refused that immediately, but a consultancy. Part-time, flexible around Audrey's school schedule, advising on human-centered security. Not about systems, she'd said, about people, how they think under pressure, how to prepare them for the unimaginable. He'd taken 3 days to consider. Then accepted. On a Thursday evening, as autumn light turned the city gold, Seraphina stood on the rooftop terrace of Lockhart Tower. She'd set out 2 cups of black tea on the small table there, the city spreading below them like a living map. William arrived 15 minutes late, slightly out of breath. Sorry. Audrey had piano lessons. Her teacher says she's a natural. Seraphina smiled. A real smile. Not the corporate version. Don't apologize for being a father. That's the most important job in the building. He sat across from her, accepted the tea. For a moment, they just breathed the cool air. Watched the sunset paint the windows of distant towers. I made a list, William said finally, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Things I want to learn again. Patience. Forgiveness. How to say thank you, without it sounding like debt. Seraphina read it, her throat tight. I have a list too, mostly about seeing people instead of positions, listening instead of directing, being wrong without being destroyed by it. Hard work, William observed. The hardest. She set her tea down. Could we maybe start with something smaller, like counting sunsets? He considered this, the ghost of a smile on his lips. I think I could manage that. They sat in comfortable silence, the distance between them deliberate and safe. No hand-holding, no kiss. Just the simple presence of 2 people learning to see each other clearly. On the table between them, partially hidden by William's temporary security badge, was one of Audrey's heart stickers, a small promise of tomorrow. 5 o'clock tea, Seraphina said. Floor 38. Same time next week? I'll be here. The sun dipped below the horizon, and neither of them looked away from the beauty of it. In the weeks that followed, the media moved on to other stories. Bridget released a final internal video, William's hands disarming the device. Technical details carefully obscured, but the moment of precise courage preserved. It became required viewing in the company's crisis training. Vivian announced the Historical Impact Compensation Fund at a press conference, her voice steady as she detailed the scope of review. We cannot undo the past, but we can acknowledge it and provide restitution to those harmed by our corporate predecessors. Henry Blake confirmed that William had agreed to provide consultation for FBI crisis response training, teaching agents to maintain clarity when chaos reigns. Oliver Grant updated the company's operational motto, printed now on every security badge. People first. Systems second. George Mason and Finn Enoch overhauled building safety protocols, installing new monitoring systems that flagged anomalies in real time. Never again, Finn said simply. In the final frame of this story, Audrey ran across the rooftop garden, her backpack bouncing. She stopped in front of Seraphina, who'd just arrived for the weekly tea meeting, and held out a fresh heart sticker. This is for you, Audrey said seriously. Daddy says you're learning to be brave too. Keep it. When you're scared, look at it. Seraphina knelt down, accepting the sticker with hands that trembled slightly. She pressed it carefully to her portfolio, right next to the company logo. Thank you, Audrey. I'll treasure it. William arrived then, 2 containers of tea in hand. Sorry, I had to brew a new pot. Always worth the wait, Seraphina said. and meant it. They settled into their usual spots, the city breathing around them. Somewhere below, Lockhart Industries continued its work. But here, in this small pocket of space, 3 people, a father, a daughter, and a woman learning to lead with humanity, simply existed together. William spoke first, his voice quiet but carrying. There are bombs in the world that only diffuse when we learn to listen. Seraphina answered, her own voice softer than it had ever been in board meetings. And there are hearts that only heal when we're patient enough to let them. The sunset painted them all in gold, and for the first time in years, William Carter felt something other than survival. He felt hope,